We are here in the Cluboratory at Miles of Golf. I'm your host, Luke. I'm joined by one of our expert club fitters, John Wachowski. John, what's up, man?
How's it going?
Today we are looking at a brand new line of drivers from TaylorMade. It is their highly anticipated Qi10 line of drivers. We have 3 different head shapes and models, similar to what we've seen in years past, with some small changes in between. We have the Qi10 LS, which is replacing the Stealth 2 Plus. We have the just normal Qi10, which replaces the normal Stealth 2. And we have the Qi10 Max, which replaces the Stealth 2 HD. And each one of these heads is meant to do a very similar thing that we saw last year, but again, some changes in between. We have the lower spinning head model of the LS. We have kind of your more mid-range, meant to fit the most wide variety of golfer of the Qi10. And then we have the Qi10 Max, which TaylorMade's not so much pushing that model this year, but that is their 10K forgiveness driver, the 10,000 units of MOI, something we've seen other brands like Cobra do in the past where they're really preaching forgiveness in that. And that might be the biggest change from what we saw with Stealth 2, because that Stealth 2 HD model was meant to be that high draw model to help someone cater to that slice miss we so often see. This one is meant to be just even more neutral and more forgiving than any other head they have in that lineup. And then today, like I said, I have John Wachowski joining me. John is our resident TaylorMade staffer. He's been playing TaylorMade drivers for, I think, the last 6 or 7 years.
Yeah, probably looking at 5 years now.
5 years? All right. Yeah, I knew you with Sim. I knew you with Sim 2. You've played each of them as they've gone. I've never really played TaylorMade drivers. I've never been the biggest fan. They don't fit me quite as well. So this is why I'm excited to have you hit them, because you have a lot of experience to draw on with these models. What is different about this Qi10 line of drivers compared to what you've seen with ones in the past?
So the Qi10 LS is supposed to be like the direct replacement that I was playing, which was Stealth 2 Plus.
All right, yeah.
When looking at it, looking at the research, it does state that it does have a flatter lie angle than what their prior models have had.
Yep.
You still have your slide weight. It actually brought in some of Stealth 2 Plus's fairway into it, where that weight will actually go under the carbon to bring in more draw bias if needed.
So one thing you just mentioned with that driver is the weight track. It's a little bit smaller this year than what we've seen in years past with TaylorMade's lower spinning drivers. Why do you think it is just a little bit tinier?
So when looking at it, it is more just for a center of gravity change. Yeah. So like for me last year, I had my weight all the way into the toe because I have a toe miss, and I just want a little bit of help on that shot there. Yeah. I'm not looking for it to add forgiveness to any other shot. I just want a little bit better result from that miss.
Yeah, and a lot of times when we see these lower spinning drivers, they are typically meant for your faster player, someone that has a little bit more club head speed. Normally, we want to cater that center of gravity to the toe to prevent from that left miss. Yeah. That's just something that usually good players, faster players, they don't want to see that ball going left. If anything, we want to see it fall a little bit right. Moving into just the standard Qi10 head, what's the major differences between this and just the normal Stealth 2?
So the major difference between that and Stealth 2, I mean, it's nothing crazy different. Yeah. I would say it's got a little bit of a center of gravity change to where the center of gravity is just a little bit higher in that one to kind of help cater to that guy that wants more forgiveness, but still have good spin results as well.
Yeah. And then overall, we kind of skipped over this at the beginning, just changes as a lineup. We have an entirely new crown on all of these heads. It's their Infinity Crown is what they're calling it. It just kind of covers more space on the top of the head. Is that correct?
Yeah, and me personally, I love the look of it a lot better.
Yep. They changed the overall aesthetics of the driver. I'm a big fan of that. I didn't like looking down at the red head. So overall, looks-wise, I really like the changes they're making into this. And then going into the last driver that we're going to be looking at today of the Qi10 Max, again, I was talking about it. This is their ultimate forgiveness driver. Again, more and more companies are, instead of trying to cater to the lower spinning, not necessarily going more higher spinning, but higher forgiveness. Why are we seeing companies do that?
I think it's becoming more and more common that people just want to hit the ball straight. So having a draw bias model isn't absolutely necessary. And that's where if you can fit majority of players into that very forgiving driver and get them the additional speed, I think that's going to be a great result.
And kind of one of those keywords you include in there, you said draw bias. We've seen most companies, I think Titleist kind of aside, they always have a driver that is meant to help the person that misses off to the right or to the left if they're a lefty. This weight that we see in the Qi10 Max, it is in the heel, but something they are saying, this isn't supposed to be a draw bias driver.
Yeah, so what I've heard is that the spread of the weight is what has caused it to hit that 10K or that 10,000 MOI. Yeah. And you'll see even on the toe of that club that it is a little bit more hefty than what you would see on the standard Qi10.
And then one last thing, we're still going to touch on this a little bit as you hit them, of just the aesthetic looking down at it. Because you haven't hit any of these drivers yet. This is going to be a good opportunity for you to see which one of these heads, this is going to be a fitting for you. I'm going to be curious to see what you think aesthetically wise, because I was looking down, the LS definitely has that smaller look that we're used to, that tour-like profile. In you just holding them in your hands, do you see any differences between head shape of all three of these?
Yeah, so the LS, like you said, it really, to me, it didn't look any different other than looking at that crown. Okay. That was the big change of it. The standard Qi, I will say, looks more pleasing to my eye than what Stealth 2 did.
Okay. Why is that?
It had that more compact look, slightly deeper face without being as spread out in terms of a very flat club head.
Totally. And then Qi10 Max, have you looked at that yet, kind of setting it down?
I have looked at it. I will say that is definitely the biggest looking driver. It definitely looks like they have that weight spread out, and yeah, when you do that, you definitely got to make it a little bit wider and a little bit more shallow. So
even me looking down at it, you can see it from the bottom how it kind of spreads out a little bit. TaylorMade even noted that in terms of total CC, I think it's technically more, in quotes, more than 460. But in that kind of liquid model that they use to measure it, it does fit, obviously, USGA standards of 460 cc's. A couple of things that I'm going to be really looking at today, testing-wise, is number one, how this LS driver compares to your LS driver of last year, or the Stealth 2 Plus. I want to see kind of one-to-one what major differences there are in terms of overall spin, launch, things of that nature, how it's doing on the misses. But most importantly, I want to see the difference of consistency and forgiveness between Qi10 and Qi10 Max. I want to see if there really is that big of a difference going into that 10K, and if that driver is really going to fit into the lineup as we kind of should see it fit. All right. Other than that, man, let's hit some drivers. And one quick note before we start testing too, you will notice we are using yellow range balls. We always like to use premium golf balls in these scenarios to match what the golfer is really trying to see on the golf course with their specific golf ball. But we are in Michigan. On camera, you can see the snow out there onto the range. We're not always able to pick to the fullest extent that we want to, but as always, fear not. We're using TrackMan. TrackMan has a normalized feature, so everything should still be as close to what we want it as if it was going to be a urethane, Pro V1, TP5X, whatever you may want to hit.
Yeah.
But other than that, let's do some testing. Sounded solid. That sounded a lot better than Stealth 2, if you're asking me. I really like the sound of that.
Yeah, I definitely think it did sound better. I will say I pulled it a little bit, but it was a very solid strike.
Something I like to see then, we pulled it a little bit. It launched at 12 degrees. What do you think that spun at?
From the flight, 2300?
It was right on the dot, actually. I almost would have thought you were going to guess lower because, again, we're pulling if on a pull, we're going to decrease that dynamic loft a little bit. With the lower spinning head, to still see it spin at 2300, that's really good. Sometimes with these lower spinning drivers, we have an issue with it just kind of diving out of the air. So when we're looking at these drivers, that's always a very important thing to note is, hey, what's it going to do when we kind of come over the top a little bit? Is it still going to reach a peak apex and see that max distance that we want to see out of it?
Yeah, and that's one of the biggest things. Like, if I pull it, that's on me. I don't want to see it hooking over there and diving out of the sky. And
it didn't hook at all. That curved 4 feet. So that was all starting direction right there. Theoretically, depending on where we're aiming in the fairway, you might catch the left center, if not that left rough. That's still in play right there. One other important thing to note as we're testing right now, you've always played the 8 degree, right?
In years past.
It even got down as far as 6 degrees at one point because you're just hitting up on it a little bit. But you've worked it back, worked the swing back to play that 8 degree. This is the 9 degree model. We want to keep it at 9 degrees so that we can see the true differences between all three of these heads. That shot right there almost shows me that if you were going to play this LS model, we might want to bump that loft up a little bit. Because if that was the 8 degree, that's falling out of the sky. That's not reaching 250 in the air.
Yeah. No, I 100% agree with that.
Let's see a few more. Little on the heel?
Yeah, I wouldn't say so much the heel, but at least low on the face.
All right, so launch still stayed at 12 degrees. That's really good for a shot like that. We definitely saw spin jump up. Low on the face, 3,100 RPMs of spin, but he still kept a good amount of ball speed, still 150 miles an hour ball speed, the same that we saw in the last strike. Just lost a little bit of difference from that extra spin, which we can't complain about that.
Yeah, that right there, that's a miss I would definitely take on the course.
Yeah, that landed about, 2 feet to the right of your target line, so we'll take that every single day. See a couple more. Just kind of fell off that one a little bit.
A little bit, but that was still a solid strike. I will say I do that on the course every now and then.
Yeah. Again, that was what I'm seeing with it through those first 3 shots. Not a lot of curvature on those misses, which for a lower spinning head, that's phenomenal. I know this is supposed to be the least forgiving head out of them all. I'm going to be curious to see how that kind of builds up to that 10K forgiveness, because that only curved 10 feet. Again, start line dictated a lot of where that landed, but it's always good to know that, hey, it's not going to curve off the planet on a shot like that.
Yeah, I'll take that.
So you take about 14 of those?
Yep.
Yeah. 151 ball speed, best strike of the day in terms of ball speed. 14 degrees of launch, 2,500 RPMs of spin, 257, kind of dead down the middle, well, the left side of the fairway. Again, only 5 feet of curvature. I absolutely love seeing that. I did not expect that out of this, the lack of curvature, really.
Yeah.
Because this is a head that people want to work a little bit more, something that's meant to, again, curve. This is just going dead straight. It's all dictated kind of on start line. Let's see one more good one with that guy.
Yeah, I mean, a little heely, but.
Yeah, I truly can't complain with that at all. Still, I mean, with that heel strike, curves back a little bit. Still only spun at 2,300, which is amazing to see. Again, smash factor dropped way down, caught it off the heel, but still 148 ball speed. We'll take that.
That's not a big variation at all.
I mean, in terms of distance, carry-wise, you were plus or minus 5.7. We had some really good strikes. We had some bad strikes. To still see the distance keep up like that, that's really good out of a model like that. And it should only improve kind of as we get up in forgiveness. Let's look at the Qi10 model now. All right, now moving into just the standard model. Same exact specs, 9 degrees aloft, same exact shaft, the ADHD 6X. Going to be really curious to see what this does, 1, spin-wise, and 2, I want to see if it keeps up curvature-wise.
One thing I want to point out, too, is that they also have incorporated that sight line up here. And I will say that is that's pleasing to the eye, honestly.
Love that. I definitely got more up in the air.
Yeah. Wasn't a bad hit. I mean, again, kind of seeing that pole that I have going. I mean,
that's your miss, though.
I don't swing very much during the winter. So
yeah. And again, we were talking about before we got on camera, just talking about what the kind of typical misses for you would be. I play a lot of golf with you. That's not an uncommon shot for you. But it's important to know that we're not always going to hit it perfect. It's not always going to go dead down the middle of the fairway. That actually curved a little bit more than what we saw with the LS, which is interesting to see. But still not off the planet, which is good.
I'm trying to think, spin rate was probably, what, 27?
You're right on the dot. You're a human track man. 2,770. But yeah, it definitely got higher in the air. We'll look at that kind of towards the end of what peak height is going to be. But we definitely noticed that little bit of CG moving back on that drive. Yeah. It's definitely getting up in the air a lot quicker. And even all things equal, this driver technically should start a little bit more left than what the LS is doing, all lie angle wise. Getting it a little bit more upright, we're going to shut that face down just ever so slightly, and it's going to start a little bit more to the left, which, again, isn't going to be uncommon. Ball speed's keeping up. Spin is just a little bit higher, which, again, all the things we would expect to see out of this driver head.
I will say looks, sound, and feel, though, it's hard for me to tell. I mean, before with Stealth 2 Plus and Stealth 2, I was able to just set them down and be able to tell the difference between the two. But no, this one, it looks and feels like your more player style driver, I would say.
Okay. And that's also, it's interesting you bring that up. You may have heard of him, Rory McIlroy. He's playing this driver head now. A guy that's always played like the lower spinning driver heads out there. he has this in the bag right now, which goes to show, like, hey, if Rory McIlroy can look down at this and still think it looks good, I think everybody else can agree with that, that, hey, this is going to look good for us.
Yeah.
A low heel.
I mean, maybe a little bit. Didn't feel bad though.
Ball speed definitely dropped down. Again, I could hear it a little bit on there. The kind of sound you hear when you catch on the heel, like almost a little bit duller out of it. Definitely overspun on us right there. That jumped way up to 3,700. So that's the miss we weren't seeing with the LS head, which is why you would even typically play that one, because that shot right there, getting it into that LS model, we're going to cut spin down a little bit and hopefully get a little bit more carry out of it.
Mind if we lower it down a little bit?
Yeah, we can do that. And then we just made a quick change, as you just heard John say. We did lower the loft a little bit on this. We saw it going a little bit more to the left. We always like to keep loft the same to see the truest extent of what these drivers are going to do one-to-one. But we're also curious to see if taking this loft down, we did 2 clicks on the loft sleeve, so that's minus 1.5 degrees. So this is playing 7.5 right now, right? So that should, 1, lower the spin on a shot we see like that, and 2, hopefully we might see start line shift a little bit more centered, because as we take loft away, we're opening that face just a tad bit.
Yep.
All right, let's see how that does. Definitely a lot straighter right there.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Started a little bit straighter, curved a lot more back to center. We saw that kind of left to right come into play a little bit more. Perfect. Still landed in the fairway, only 25 feet to the left of your target, and that even drops spin down a little bit to that 2,600 number that we would like to see.
Yeah.
See one more with that guy. It's a really good shot right there.
Yeah.
Tad low on the face, I think.
Yeah,
What it sounded
little
like.
low.
Yeah, but still, again, finding the middle of the fairway. I think changing that loft sleeve a little bit definitely helped us out start line-wise. Not so much spin-wise as we saw. Again, that's still spun at 3,300. Kind of more showing that this head probably isn't for you when we see that spin jump up. But that's why we have that lower spinning head model. And it's really interesting to see how those two compare one-to-one. Now I want to see you hit the Qi10 Max.
I will say this, for as far on the heel that was very straight.
And that's the number one thing we wanted to see with this driver, is what it's going to do on the misses.
Yeah.
So, I mean, spin-wise, it went to 3,600. Again, 90 degrees of loft. We saw what happens when we go lower for you. It's going to perform a little bit better. But with that driver, different than what we saw with Qi10, it went a lot straighter for us. All right. With just the first swing, it's good to note that. Let's see if that continues. A lot higher in the air right there.
Yeah.
But again, a lot straighter. A whole heck of a lot straighter than what we saw.
There was hardly any curve on that one.
No. I mean, I can tell you the exact amount. 74 feet, it's not, I mean,
no.
It's when people come into fitting, they see that number, like, oh, that sounds like a lot. And in golf, we don't think of feet. We think of yards a lot. You have to divide that by 3. That is not a lot of curvature. That's still catching, I mean, that landed 24 feet right of center. That's hitting every single fairway unless you're playing the tightest golf course on the planet.
Yeah.
All right, a couple more. That almost resembled some of your shots with the LS.
It really did. It really did. It really did feel like I was going to pull it a lot more than what actually happened.
Yeah, and again, it only curved 16 feet. Now it landed very far left because we pulled it, but still seeing that lack of curvature is really, really, really good.
Yeah.
Exactly what we've been seeing.
Yep.
Definitely missed it. Again, we're 22 driver swings in, so sometimes the swing might start to kind of go away from us a little bit, but that's still catching the fairway right there. Spin-wise, again, it's a little bit higher. We're going to see how it really compares to the other models once we look at all these numbers next to each other. But in terms of dispersion, this has been one of your better ones.
Yeah, no, it definitely, in terms of dispersion on the face, like I will say this, like if I missed my Stealth 2 Plus on the heel like that, yeah, it was not looking that result.
No. You're not seeing the fairway if you hit
No.
that with the LS or Stealth 2 Plus. That right there, we like to see you. I mean, overall distance-wise, we've seen you, again, when you're hitting it good, you're carrying about like 250, maybe a little bit more. That still went 240. It's only seeing 10 yards of drop-off on that bad of a swing.
And I've always been a high spin player, so that's, I mean,
Yeah.
this, that is not unexpected for me, but to see that little bit of curvature is definitely a change.
Totally. Totally. Yeah. All right, let's hit one more with this guy. Yeah, dead straight. Starts a little left, curves back ever so slightly to the right. This is a fairway finder.
Yeah.
This is proven exactly what I asked at the beginning of, is this driver going to go straighter? And we definitely saw that. Now that we've hit all three models, it's time to look at the numbers and see what they did kind of one-to-one against each other. Starting off with the LS, again, the model you're most familiar with. 150 miles an hour ball speed. It's kind of right where we expected to be for you. 13 degrees of launch, 2,600 RPM to spin, just a tick under 25.99. It's really, really good. It's exactly what we would want to see in the fitting bay. Average peak apex of 98 feet. That, again, is perfect. This is showing me that, hey, we're going to get rid of your 8-degree head you've been playing. We're going to switch you to a 9. Because all these numbers are theoretically perfect for what we'd want to see. And again, my favorite number of it all is only 18 feet of curvature. You know, you were starting them a little bit farther to the left. Again, you haven't been taking as many swings recently as you want. That is your miss, is getting a little bit over the top. But with this driver head, to see it even start a little bit left but not curve at all, that's perfect. You'd mentioned that before, that, hey, you don't want to see the ball go left. Even if you were to tug it, to see it still going pretty much dead straight after that, that's really, really good. That's what we want to see out of that. Going into the Qi10, kind of that more middle number. Ball speed was very similar. You actually hit that a little bit faster, so good to see. We see forgiveness going to work there. 13 degrees of launch, 2,900 RPM to spin, so bumps up a little bit. Exactly what we would expect with a more forgiving head, center of gravity pulled back. Side total, again, a little bit farther left. That is expected as well. A little bit more upright model of that driver head, so theoretically it's going to start a little bit left. We made that loft sleeve adjustment midway through that to see, hey, is this going to change start line for us? It did, too. So that's good to see that with this head. We noticed it still going a little bit more to the left. We're like, all right, let's fix that. Let's take the loft down a little bit, and we saw the start line just shift ever so slightly to the right. And very similar to what we saw with the LS model, curvature was very, very minimal. So even if you're pulling this, it's still going to stay somewhat on the golf course, which when we're playing golf, that's what you want to see. You don't want to see that ball going left on left on left, because that's where doubles and triple bogeys come from. And then finally, the Qi10 Max, the most forgiving head that they offer. We saw ball speed drop down a little bit, which can happen sometimes even in those more forgiving models with center of gravity not pushed as far forward. But distance didn't suffer all that much from that. Where we see that distance really pull back is that spin rate number. It jumped up to 3,500, which I was kind of guessing that was going to happen from the start at that 9-degree loft with this head. I knew it was going to spin a little bit more. It went a lot higher in the air. I think we noted that when we were hitting it. That averaged 125 feet in the air in terms of peak apex. That's almost 30 feet higher than what we saw with the LS. So seeing that spin jump up, expected. Going back into the max numbers, something that can confuse some people is looking at that overall curvature number. They were really, really good with the LS and Qi10. It shocked me a little bit at first to see 45 feet of average curvature, but you spun it a lot more. Spin and curvature go hand in hand, but I like seeing that amount of curvature because that kept it in the fairway for you. That was by far your straightest driver out of all three. Now, we didn't hit it as far, but that's not what this driver's preaching. They're not saying this is going to go super, super long. This is your driver like, hey, it's going to go into the middle of the fairway, and it did that. Tell me some of your thoughts now, kind of wrapping up, of these three driver heads after you hit them.
Yeah, so going from each driver head, I will say this from prior years. I could never look at the other ones because they always looked really closed or upright, whatever it was. And each one of them, honestly, when I put them down, they all had a very familiar sense to them.
Okay.
The Max being somewhat of that outlier, just having that bigger footprint.
Okay.
But
so you did see it, setting it down, and you did
yeah,
notice the bigger.
that one was the only one that, like, clearly this one is a little bit bigger. It's a little bit more spread out in terms of mass.
Okay.
But feel-wise coming off the face, honestly, I would say the Max and the LS were actually my favorites because they felt very similar.
Sound-wise too, if I can butt in for a second, phenomenal. When I was fitting Stealth 2, I didn't like the sound of it. Sound can be anecdotal from person to person, but just when people struck Stealth 2 in the dead center, I was like, it just doesn't sound like I would want a driver to sound. They definitely changed that into this. Like, it sounds pleasing when you catch it out of the dead center, which, again, it doesn't mean much when it comes to numbers, but those are the small things that people like to see when they're hitting drivers.
Those are when you're able to nitpick, and that's what you want to be able to do, is have a driver that you can be picking apart and going like, hey, I like this one better, I like that one better.
That's the whole purpose of what we do in here. Again, it's like, obviously we're going to make sure that all the numbers work out. Like, we're not going to give you a driver and tell you to go home with it if it's not working numbers-wise. But those small things, look, sound, and feel, that is a lot for a golfer. That's confidence inspiring. And if you're more confident standing over a golf ball, you're probably going to make a better swing.
And that's also something with me coming in, not actually even hitting these drivers yet. This is my first time hitting them. And looking at all the research and seeing the guys on tour playing the Qi10 or the Max even, and me always been playing that low spin head, I was looking at them like, oh, maybe I can actually get into the more forgiving driver now. Yeah. And then just seeing that the LS is still, okay, hey, yeah, that's still the driver for me. Yeah. Albeit from going from a 6-degree driver 2 years ago to now possibly even going back to the 9-degree is kind of surprising to me, but it is low spinning, I'll tell you that.
Yeah. And what John just said there too, of that change in loft, that is the #1 reason you come in and get fit. I'm a broken record. I say that in every single video. I just said it, I think, 2 minutes ago in terms of look, sound, and feel. But even numbers. So many people, they might have a driver from 2 years ago. It's a 10.5 degree, and they hit it well. They're like, let me get that new driver in 10.5 degree, and let me just take it home. We saw in the numbers that the 8 degree, well, this 9 degree compared to your 8 degree, we're almost identical in what the output is. That shows me like, hey, you should never buy a driver without putting it on the launch monitor first and seeing what those numbers are doing. Overall, I think TaylorMade did a very good job with this line of drivers. They did what they said of an LS being a little bit lower spinning and the Qi10 Max of being the most forgiving. We saw that on paper. Well, other than that, that about wraps it up. Again, thank you guys so much for tuning in and watching. It really means a lot to us. If you have any other ideas or video ideas that you want us to do, leave those in the comments below. But other than that, see you later.